Hello, everyone. Welcome to the AskPiesNation podcast, where, the pies may be hot and the drinks, I don't know if they're cold this time around, but we'll see how we go. I'm Nicholas Sacco, your host for this week's episode 23 of season 5, or episode 136 if you're counting from the beginning. An ugly, ugly loss to the Hawks. Nothing went right on or off field. And with some huge matches to come, there's no shying away from the fact that we need to get back to our best sooner rather than later. We'll go through what went down against Hawthorn. We'll have a bit of a venting session with the fans on AskPiesNation, chat VFL, and speak to our next guest, the crowd competition winner. I've got Jack and Marcus joining me in the studio today, who were lucky enough to be in the presence of the Mighty Pies on Saturday afternoon or twilight at the G. And, just right from the start, boys, it just didn't go right at all. And now we're sort of looking at our wounds a bit, wondering where it all went wrong.
Yes, Nico, Jack, a very, very optimistic start is that we haven't had to do too many of these this year. So just putting things in context and still sitting atop the ladder. Really can't believe that we've had some results go our way in the last fortnight that have allowed us to maintain that edge at the top of the competition. But what went wrong on the weekend, Jack? Was there a curious case of some unknown virus once again circulating through the club? Was there a cement in the legs of the Collingwood football team? I would love to know what you thought managed to grasp every single player on the field except Beau McCreary.
Well, excuse the pun, but I think it's pretty black and white what went wrong on the weekend, Marcus. And it's a bit of a trend we've spoken about on the pod right throughout this season, just even in some of our wins that we've had. But just the lack of hunt and contested possession through major periods of the game has come to bite us on the backside. I mean, we've been getting away with it up until this point, but Hawthorn really showed us what can happen when a side has their way with you for 4 quarters of footy, and yeah, we really never looked like it, Nico.
No, absolutely not. And it's put us in a bit of a tricky position, and we'll get to those specifics in just a moment. But we might as well get the pie that caught your eye out the way, because I don't reckon there were many for good reason on Saturday. So keen to see what you came up with. I'll start with you, Jack.
Yeah, well, I'll just start with the bloke that Marcus just mentioned there before, Beau McCreary. On a day where we once again lacked in the contested ball and pressure aspect, thought Beau was still able to provide us some element of ferociousness at the contest, and the reason why he caught my eye is because it was business as usual for Beau. I mean, there was no change in his form in previous weeks or throughout the season. So I thought Beau just went out and did his job as he has been for the whole of 2023, and made some blokes who perhaps weren't doing their job look a bit ordinary. So hats off to Beau for being able to keep his head above water. Marcus,
Is he a future midfielder?
I think it might be a good time to start that
Yeah.
prospect with a couple of the injuries we've got at hand, but I don't mind that move. I think we saw it a few times on Saturday, and it's a position that obviously takes a while to adapt to, but there's no reason why he can't quickly evolve himself in that role.
Yeah, well, he's got such an amazing athletic profile with his speed and strength, and his field kicking is excellent. So it might be something that we see more of if we can't get our hands on the footy. But pie that caught my eye, more on the negative side, was actually Paddy Lipinski this week, and I thought truckload of passengers in this performance, and it's very easy to just say that the whole team performed poorly, but I just watched his work ethic, and amongst other midfielders, didn't think he was anywhere near the level, and is probably a guy that, similar to Mason Coxton last month of footy, when the team's going well, does get that get out of jail card a bit more easily. But now that we've had a couple of losses, just starting to wonder whether he needs to do a bit more as that connecting half forward, as we loved to see, I guess, just after the bye when he came back into the team. So he's one guy I've just got on watch, and would love to see a bit more from him to rebuild some momentum into the finals series, Nico. But pie that caught your eye as well, please.
Just on Lipinski, does it warrant a case of going back to the VFL, or are you happy to stick with him in the seniors for the next couple of weeks? I mean, we'll get to more team selection specifics in a moment.
No, you got to play him for sure.
Okay.
But he's just a guy that on this particular weekend I thought Tommy Mitchell, Jordan De Goey, even
Yeah.
Pendles were very lackadaisy with the way that the Hawks allowed us to spread the field, and they weren't transitioning well enough to allow our zone to work, amongst others. But yeah, that was the play that caught my eye for the wrong reason, and we haven't had too many, as I said. So it's fair game.
I'm going to follow the trend. I won't go for anyone in the midfield with this particular edition because it's pretty obvious they were all very disappointing. As soon as team selection came out on Thursday, my eyes went straight to Ash Johnson, and I thought, here we go. This is a great opportunity. He's had some nice weeks in the VFL, coming into a clash that we need to get back on the winners list, and he's got a forward line of McStay and Mycheck to help him out. Jamie Elliott's in good form. This might be a really good opportunity for him. He doesn't have to be the number one leading forward. He can play his own game and have a role, but like so many players on Saturday, he just looks so lethargic. It's inability to go head first into contests. I mean, I don't know if it's the confidence. I don't know if it's the big stage for him playing in a different system. I was really expecting a lot more from Ash Johnson, and it's not entirely his fault. The delivery inside 50 was again shocking, and we'll get to those exactly why in a moment. Our forward structure was just an absolute mess, so it wasn't entirely his fault. And I don't think it warrants him getting dropped straight away because that's just cruel. But I don't know. I think for the little 1%ers that, we've expected other players in the competition, in our side rather, to stand up and perform with Bo McCreary laying his, tackles inside 50 or the little smothers or going in head first with the ball or finding an ability to, just create a contest when it's down the line or inside 50. He just didn't do enough of that for mine. And the effort just didn't look like it was where it needed to be for someone that's vying for a spot in our final 22. I was a little bit disappointed. Happy to let 1 week off knowing the whole side performed subpar. But if it continues down this trend, then maybe he just doesn't stay in the senior side because there's an opportunity here for him. And for me, he just didn't take it as well as I thought he would have early on in that game.
It was an interesting selection call, I thought, as well, Nico, because as we now know in hindsight, is a wonderful thing. But Hawthorn, I thought they looked a lot taller than us as well, especially when we were forced to go down the line. Ned Reeves, I mean, I know he's 7 foot tall, but the bloke just towered over absolutely everyone. And I said a few times, it almost feels like we need someone like a Mason Cox or a Billy Frampton who just provides you that bit of extra strength and height around the contest. I know Mason's been incredibly down on form and unfortunately, he probably deserves his spot in the VFL at the moment. And Ash, conversely, has been playing well in the VFL, so deserves his spot to come in. But we just looked, incredibly small. Added to the fact, to your points, Nico, that Ash, again, was a little bit lethargic and just missed a few marks in terms of his pressure and intensity. But it was a trend that went right through all 23 players, or probably at least 20 of them on Saturday, which is hopefully a trend that, doesn't become a habit.
Yeah, I will say caveat for Pilot caught your eye this week with some negatives. It's very hard to. We could have all probably said Bo McCreary, to be honest. If I look at how we played, and I can't remember a match where there's been so few shining lights.
Yep.
Like as I said off the top, whatever was impacting most of the team, except for maybe Jeremy Howe in the first term and Bo McCreary when he went into the middle, it just seemed it was the same problem that every player was having. And I think it was low energy. I really do. So I'm sure we can get into that a little bit more in a moment, Nico. But missing or not being able to kick the distance from 40 metres out in the first term of a match, that happened on the weekend, and it did against the Blues last week as well. So maybe that Port final just having a bit of a residual effect.
Well, yeah, so there's the first part to the loss on Saturday, and it was that lack of fitness. I remember speaking at the start of the year, the game against Geelong in round 1, where we could have played another 3 or 4 games that night. We were so fit, we were firing, had really high energy levels, and there've been big games this year where we've done the same thing, and Port and Melbourne games, I know they haven't gone our way some of the time, but we were always right up for the challenge, and we were willing to, at every single contest, give our all every single time. Wasn't the case. You mentioned right from the outset, Hawthorn had us covered in the midfield, and from then, it didn't look like we were willing to work hard enough to win the momentum back in the match, and it was incredibly disappointing. So why were we outworked? Is it fitness? Is it energy? Were we just going through the motions? Did we not take Hawthorn as seriously as we probably should have. There are other reasons behind this because from the outside looking in, there's no excuse for a performance like that. Skills can be terrible and structures, and Hawthorn might outcoach us, but they outworked us, and that has been Fly's mantle from the start. And for that to have occurred on Saturday, just so disappointing.
Yeah, and we again haven't seen too many performances like this where that mantra of turning up with strong effort and intent and belief as well. I didn't see any belief in the way that we were playing, even when Crispy was doing his best off the halfback to try and rescue some of the attacks the Hawks were putting on us. Just our marking was as bad as I've seen it for some seasons, Jacko. So look, Nick, it's intriguing the fact that there's a flatness about this team at the moment, and I don't know where that's come from, given it was spoken about at the start of the year that our high performance staff had done such an amazing job allowing the guys to run through matches and still be super fit. Nick Dacos plays most of the game without any sort of influence. Yes, that's a part of it, but I'm not convinced that you can take him away and still see this sort of lack of intent around the footy. So I'm intrigued to see how the next few weeks go.
Yeah, I think it's a flatness more than a fitness thing, Nico. I think for sure last week against Carlton, it felt flat. I mean, we spoke about where supporters felt flat or felt exhausted after that game against Port. But I think after a 6 or 7 day break and then coming up against what's meant to be a lesser side in Hawthorn. You know, we're not playing against the Brownlow medalists of Patrick Cripps and, Coleman medalists of Charlie Curnow. We've got, Will Day and...
it was very good.
Yeah, they were all exceptional. I'm not taking anything away from Hawthorn. They had a day out and we had a really horrible day. But, yeah, it just... I don't know. If there's it feels like it's there maybe towards the season end going through the motions a little bit. The human brain's an amazing thing, Nico. I don't feel like there's an arrogance about the way we played on Saturday, but there's certainly a element of just a really low energy.
Yeah, and I'm just curious as to where that come about.
Yeah, and the champion sides, Geelong, Hawthorn, Brizzy, even Richmond in the last 2 decades, being on top of your game week in, week out is so difficult. And I think for a younger, I know we're a very experienced side at the moment with games played, but we've still got a lot of guys who are coming through, maybe playing their first, second finals campaigns coming up. So we aren't an established high quality team. We are absolutely consolidating, but to be backing it up week in, week out is really difficult. But when you see your captain turning the ball over, uncontested possessions in the back half, there's something running through the team that might not be able to be quantified at this point in time, but all you can hope is that a reset this week, however the coaches managed to do that, leads to a big performance on Friday night.
Make a good point about Darcy Moore because it's 2 weeks now that he's made some of those mistakes and it's cost us goals or at least opportunities for the opposition. Remember, another mantra that McRae's brought to the team is about embracing those mistakes. And we've seen throughout the year, players have laughed when they've made an error and they know that they're able to go back and make amends for it next time. I didn't see too many smiles when we were making mistakes on Saturday. I think there was a genuine concern running across the team when Hawthorn was starting to get on top. Their pressure was extraordinary. We didn't have answers to it. And when we started to turn the ball over, frustration began to grow. It wasn't, it's okay, we'll get that one back. It was, why are we doing this and what's going on? I noticed a bit of that trend.
Well, we talk about Hawthorn's pressure and how good it was. It's contagious when that happens. I mean, look at that. Is it Kaczynski that tackled DeGoey in the middle of the ground there in the last quarter? He's not meant to be noted as a high pressure player himself, but he was able in that moment to lift to the standards of his team on the day. And I think as contagious as pressure is, non-pressure is contagious as well. Letting the next bloke do it, and then it's just we spoke about the avalanche effect last week, Nico, of how things can just snowball. So, yeah, look, we've got to reset. If there's any positive out of the fact that we could only find Beau McCreary as a shining light, it's the fact that yes, it's not just we're not relying on one or two key players to lift us up. Like we can take Dacos out of this side, and we still feel like we've got a lot left to give throughout the rest of the season. So I love that word, intriguing, Nico. It's going to be an intriguing last 3 weeks of the season for sure.
So the fitness and energy levels is the first part. The second part is the midfield contested ball. And Jack, I used you as the reel last week because you had said it so perfectly about winning the ball at the coalface, and it is something we failed to do once again. -15 in centre clearances. I mean, that says all you need to know, really.
Mm.
We've been a side that have struggled last year. You bring someone like Tom Mitchell in, and again, it's not entirely his fault, even though he got subbed out of the game and just didn't have that impact again throughout the middle of the ground. We had multiple players rotating through centre bounce attendances, and it was just so messy. I never seen it so disorganised before. We just weren't winning the ball from the middle. In turn, that allowed Hawthorn to really gain an edge and put us on the back foot right from the beginning. We just didn't have the answers to it. And look, I'm sure it seems simple from a supporter watching just to say, you've got to win a clearance or, get to the ball first and force a stoppage, etc. But it's not something we aren't prone to do. I know we're not the best clearance side in the comp, and that was even when we were flying earlier in the year. But surely it's got to be a priority at some point to say we need to start getting there first, because the more we allow an opposition side to get on top and allow them to build their pressure and allow them to build their momentum, that's just going to make things so much more difficult.
Oh, absolutely. And coming back to Tommy Mitchell, I mean, we have to talk about where he is at. I believe there was some ice on the quad at the end of the game, and now it starts to make me wonder if has he been carrying something in the last
Yeah,
couple of weeks.
potentially.
Given this is a Brownlow medalist, you don't sub him out. Like, I'm sorry, but if they're
Not
playing,
tactically, you don't.
no, that's what I mean. And so the fact that he ends up on the pine again, and maybe that dents the confidence, and maybe now there's a niggle that he's carrying. But I think back to particularly the first half of the season when we were probably at our best around the contest. Tom Mitchell's getting your first access, and that's what he came to the club for. He knows what he's meant to be doing, and that has dropped away almost to the point where he's not on the ground, and the effect that's having at our centre clearances is evident in the stats you just mentioned, Nico. What's even more intriguing is I think we maybe draw level or slightly win the stoppage contest. So it's not as if we're not getting it done around the ground in this game, but out of the guts, it's like the ball hit the deck, the Hawthorn players react, the Collingwood players look, and then try to tackle them, and off they go. And the number of times Will Day in particular just managed to get first hands on the ball was comical, and we haven't seen this for a long time. So once again, I'm trying to remain a little bit optimistic with where we sit in the context of the season. But gee whiz, if that is the type of lack of energy going through the midfield, the rest of the team's no chance, Jacko.
Yeah, I completely agree with all those points made, Marcus. I think the concerning thing for me is that when we look back at our season and even in the games again where we've played well and we've won in those 1 to 2 quarter spurts, we have spoken a lot still around allowing teams to bully us a little bit around centre clearance and win quarters, but it was okay because we were able to win the game in another facet. Now that we're not doing that those small little trends are now becoming habits, and it's the reason we lost this game is that the game is there. If played as day, if you get the score 18-3 centre clearances, that is the game right there. There's no shying away from the fact, shying away from that fact, and I think there's also no shying away from the fact that that's been a problem for this year, if there has been any problems at all. So I don't want to buy into this ridiculous stuff that we're hearing on the various media outlets today about how without Nick Dacos we can't win the flag and all this stuff. But it is a concerning trend the way we're going, considering the fact that all this stuff that we've been talking, it's not all this stuff, it's just this one thing. If there has been a negative aspect of our game this year, it's a centre clearance, and now it's the reason why we're losing games. It's 2 in a row now, and that's why I'm a little bit worried to go out for the rest of the year.
Yeah, and there's no reason why I can't be worried knowing that these has been the performances we've been producing over the last fortnight. So you look at fitness, energy levels, contested ball. The other part is the forward structure. Because, again, it just failed, literally failed. Mychek, McStay, Johnson, Elliott at times. McCreary didn't impact, goal sense too often, but it was better in other areas, so you don't really count him in that situation. Bobby Hill, very quiet. Once again, we won 21% of marking contests, which is almost 12% lower than our season average. That might not seem like a lot, but in the context of how we've been playing our football, that is a substantial amount. And not only that, we conceded 39 points from attacking midfield change, so that goes back to that midfield situation. Sicily was having an absolute field day at half back. We weren't able to get anything going inside our attacking half. Our tackles inside 50 was just 8 for the game, and we conceded 16 more inside 50s for the entire match. So Forward half, really disappointing across the board. I know I singled out Ash Johnson in the pie that caught my eye, but you could have raffled 3 or 4 of those names because it just didn't make sense. And we got back to 2020, 2021 Collingwood a little bit where it was just long bombs inside 50, hope that someone can put their mitts on it and take a mark, and hope that there's space enough for the small forwards to do their work, and none of it was working.
Yeah, and you talk about being flat, and that's the number of times I just saw a bloke with the ball in hand on the wing or half back line, and all of the forwards just literally standing
Yeah.
still. And the midfielders too, just kind of walking. No one was looking for short hit up leads. No one's looking to get creative and go the fat side. So this just speaks to me all about energy and
Yep.
not looking to be creative and not looking to use the corridor the way we've been so used to. So hopefully it's just a bit of a funk that we're in at the moment, and it's not something that's systemic throughout the way that we've been playing. But they talk about peaking at the right time of the year, Jacko, and I think we're starting to see clubs like Melbourne, Geelong starting to hit their straps. So it's just a little bit concerning that we can go from such a high and winning a finals-like match against Port. I thought last week, fair enough, there was a bit of a hangover from such an immense game. But for that to then be a reason that it's spilt over into another week of footy, I'm not buying it.
Yeah, it's neither am I. And the thing is, now we've got 3 games. We've got an opportunity. We talk about panic stations. Is this the end of a potentially great Collingwood season? We've got 3 opportunities now against Geelong, Brisbane and Essendon for the rest of the year to rectify this. And because the reason is so obvious in energy levels and contested ball, it's something you feel like we can easily rectify. Hopefully, but it's the fact that it's been a trend for the whole year is the one that concerns me. Speaking to our forward line structure a bit, one that's an interesting one for me is Jordan De Goey got a couple of opportunities forward on the weekend and sort of reminded us that if we don't have a Tommy Mitchell firing in the middle, which is where I think we get the best out of Jordan De Goey when he's able to run on the outside and run and carry. Does he now become a bit of a forward wild card? Because it's a position he played in the past, and we don't want to get stuck into that. Remember 2018, it felt like he would kick 6 goals in the forward line, then would go quiet for 3 weeks, and then we'd throw him in the midfield. He'd have 30 possessions, so he'd be a midfielder and go quiet. So it's a bit of a tough one. But I think if Tommy Mitchell's not quite on top of his game again, because that's where I see Jordan De Goey's been playing his best footy, maybe that could be an option if we could throw him forward.
Could it be a Petrarca type role where it is a majority time inside 50, but he can still come in and play a role in the midfield when necessary?
Well, he's a confidence player, as much as we'd hate to admit it, because he's just, when he is stringing games together, it's amazing. But look, it's not off the table, and if the forward line doesn't click again, you're going to need some sort of wild card. Obviously, we threw Dakes forward early because he was copying a heavy tag, and I'm sure we'll get to the horrific injury news in just a moment. But in terms of De Goey going back into the forward line, I wonder with his psychology as well whether that's the best move, because he sees himself as a midfielder. So lots of things we're throwing on the table here, fellas, and I think that with 2 losses in a row, we start to think more real about what might be going wrong. But I'm going to back a lot of these players in to bounce back this week.
Well, 2 players that we won't be able to back for at least the next few weeks is Nick Dacos and Nathan Murphy. Of course, we heard over the last 24, 48 hours the injuries that have taken place with them. Dakes will be sidelined for at least 6 weeks. Unfortunately, he's avoided surgery, which is the good news, of course, but he's dealing with quite a bit, and we saw him on crutches across the social media platforms this morning. Nathan Murphy, syndesmosis injury for him, 2 to 3 weeks, and that's just as important in different facets because of the outstanding year he has had in the back line, and it does leave us a little bit short. Of course, we've got Billy Frampton ready to go, of course. Got pulled out of the VFL, so he'll come straight back in. But for Dakes, is it doomsday like I guess half the media are painting it to be, that we cannot win the flag without this man? The whole season's gone to dust because he's not going to be part of it for the back half of the year. Put the Brownlow stuff aside, I don't really care about that right now. It's more about what he brings to the team. And for me, this is a massive opportunity for so many players to stand up. Talk about De Goey in the forward line. Well, when he's in the midfield, then I expect him to be the number one man. I want him to be the one getting that ball and booting it forward for us. He's got that ability to do so. It might give Mitchell an opportunity to play a bit more of his role. Adams can come in and be a bit of a bull inside. Oleg Markov could be playing a full game at halfback. Pendles could be a bit more of a general there. There's so many opportunities that come with his loss. As shattering as it is to have someone of his talent not in the side, I think there's still so many chances for players to really step up, and it's going to force us to make a change, which I think is needed after what's happened over the last fortnight.
Yeah, for sure. I think the biggest adjustment, and yeah, just absolutely gutted for Dakes in particular, given it's not the sort of injury this type of season deserves. I'm sorry, just as
No, it doesn't.
as an objective footy supporter, I'm sure that everyone wants to see the top players going at their best. So heart goes out to Nick and wishing him as speedy recovery as possible. But the opportunities that will arise from this, Nico, have to be met with the fact that he is the quarterback of the team. And I think that presents a unique challenge in terms of how we're going to make our way through the midfield. Does his brother spend a little bit more time at the centre square now that Nick is unfortunately going to hopefully reappear in finals, Jacko? I don't know, but it adds another layer of complexity when the guy who creates most of your score chains has a bucket load of goal assists, etc., is now being tasked with spending some time on the sidelines.
Yeah, it's all going to be about perspective, really, isn't it? And I think opportunity is a good way to look at it if you're going to try and be positive. But of course, we all know it's not ideal. I think most people would consider him the Brownlow favourite up until now, best player in the comp. So if you're talking about like that, you're losing your best player of the comp 3 weeks out from finals. And the timeline, so where does that see us get him back if we do get him back?
So technically second week of finals.
Okay.
So if we were to be playing a semi-final, it would be that week.
Yeah.
But that's, again, if all goes well and the recovery goes good. Otherwise, it's a prelim.
Yeah, which in itself is not ideal either. If we were to make a prelim to be getting him back, then perhaps underdone. So, yeah, now, much like our energy levels, I'm really intrigued to see how we respond to this and what moves we do make to counter that. I don't subscribe to this idea that we can't win this thing without him. I think we absolutely can. He's an integral part to what we do, but I think we have enough quality on our list and we can shift the magnets around enough that we can more than cover and potentially, dare I say it, find other ways of excelling without him. But yeah, we'll feel his loss, no doubt, but hopefully that loss is felt minimally.
And for Murph, obviously Frampton will come straight back into the team, but is it a bit more complicated than that now that we've got someone a little bit less versatile in the back six, because Murph can play tall and small, as we've seen over the last couple of years. Frampton, we know, is a key position player, can pinch hit in the ruck if necessary and move around the ground in that sense. But it's going to move the magnets a little bit for Darcy Moore and that back six.
Yeah, for sure. I think guys like Isaac Quainer and even Jeremy Howe do give you a bit of flexibility, as with Murph, to play a little bit taller or a little bit smaller, even crispy at times. I still think Billy he's been part of our team when we've played our best footy this year, and I know it's a bit like who comes out for him and starts that debate again, but I'm really excited for him to get another opportunity. I do agree that his ability to read the flight of the ball, probably isn't as developed as Murph's, given he hasn't played as much time in defence, but I still think he gives us tremendous shape, and he does account for that second big-bodied forward that we might need an extra tall to cope with. But it doesn't look like Hawkins will play this week. I'm not too sure.
I don't think they'll risk him.
The verdict is there, so...
Yes, he will. It always happens. We're not sure if Tom Hawkins is going to play.
I think Cam Guthrie is expected to return, though, for the Cats.
Okay.
So.
Yeah.
I feel like it's always when we play Geelong, Tom Hawkins in doubt on the Monday. And then
That's very true.
Come 2 o'clock on Friday afternoon, he'll be the fittest he's ever been. But no, but look, I'm like Marcus, I'm really excited for Billy to get his chance. I'm absolutely gutted for Murph. I'm obviously gutted for Nick Dacos and what that could potentially mean for the rest of our year, but I'm almost equally, if not more, gutted for Murph. I think he's been one of our best defenders, if not the best, in the past month of football. Thought he's exceptional against Port Adelaide and has been in defeat the past 2 weeks, has been a stand-up performer as well. I think his injury probably put a little bit of a shade on how good he was on the weekend, alongside Bo McCreary as one of the ones who actually stood up and played his role, and just his heart and the way he goes about footy. He's a real example and a real barometer, I feel, for our backline. And I'm not necessarily looking to a Billy Frampton now to respond to that. I'm looking for the bloke who's on mine and Marcus's hoodies here, I'd really love to see our captain
Yeah.
return to some of the form that we've seen him in the first half of this season. He's had a quiet few weeks, and I would really like to see this as an opportunity for him to stand back up and really lead from the back, but lead from the front as well.
Great call. Yeah, I absolutely agree. He's been very quiet, a few costly turnovers, but definitely can respond, that is for sure. In terms of what this does for the rest of the home and away season, I'm going to leave that to our discussion with the fans and Ask Pies Nation. But was there anything else to come out of the nightmare from Saturday before we move on to votes?
No, I think we've covered the main points, to be honest. I think that we could dissect each player's game and say, oh, he didn't do enough or they didn't do enough, rah, rah, rah. I guess we haven't seen too many matches this year where Fly has been what feels like out-coached, but I also reserve my comment on that because it did seem as if the players were so fatigued that even if they wanted to execute the game plan, it just wasn't happening because we didn't get our hands on the ball first out of the guts. So we hope this is a blip on the radar and a very rare example of what our footy looks like at its worst, Nick.
Yeah, absolutely, Jack.
Yeah, not a lot, Nico. Can't quite remember if it came at a stage where the game was out, but I'm not sure I wanted to be seeing Jeremy Howe line up on a wing for much more often for the rest of the year. I remember seeing that as if to say, yeah, I don't think this is our day at all if we've got Howie playing up on a wing, but yeah, that's the only thing. If we're going to win the flag, Jeremy Howe is not to go anywhere near that at the start of the centre bounce.
Fair enough. That's a good point. Let's get to our votes. Then, looking from the fan votes, it was a very difficult three to pick, that is for sure. Bo McCreary just sneaks in, I think, for top votes today from the weekend's game. Pendles, Elliott, Crisp are all around the mark as well. But Jack, who have you gone for this week?
So I'll give my one to Jack Crisp. Marcus mentioned it earlier on the pod about his efforts in the second half were really there. He was trying to break the lines, trying to do everything that he could to get us back into the game, and he was exceptional. I think he had about over 450 metres gained, which on any day is exceptional. Jordan De Goey, I gave my 2 votes to. I've since changed. He was going to be my 3, but I've changed him. Got 2 good opportunities up forward. Gave us maybe a glimpse into what we might see for the rest of the year. And Bo McCreary for 3 votes. And they are always hard for me to give the votes, but incredibly difficult this week, Nico or Marcus.
Yeah, no worries. One, I went with Pendles, 2 to Crispy and 3 to Bo. But look, honestly, this week was as difficult as it's been to find 3 legitimate vote getters, Nico.
Yeah, spot on. I was very similar to you. Crispy got 1, Pendles 2, Bo 3. I thought Pendles was okay. You look at him on paper and you think he's had a pretty decent outing. But again, he was just like the rest of the team in that midfield. Very sluggish. A few un-Pendles-like decisions made by him. So, yeah, a bit disappointing all around, but I thought he was still okay and it was at least a little bit effective with his disposals. He also had 7 tackles, which I think was a bit of a standout for a side that didn't really apply too much pressure on Saturday. So, hopefully, they're numbers that we can see from a lot more of our boys in the next few weeks. Got a big Ask Pies Nation for you coming up, as well as a VFL wrap and our next guest, a crowd competition winner. Welcome back to the Pies Nation podcast, where the pies are hot and the drinks are cold. We're going to move straight into Ask Pies Nation, Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, TikTok. It's where you can find us, Pies Nation. Simple one again this week, just a nice vent session for our fans. And gee, we got a lot of comments across our social media channels after what took place on Saturday. So got a few keen ones to read out here to get your thoughts on what the fans had to say. We'll start over with, let's start with Twitter actually, because there were a few interesting ones to come out of there, or X as it's called now. Matt on Twitter, it's bizarre. Part of me is thinking they've taken their foot off the gas and looking towards finals. We play better when we're consistently piling on the pressure, and we win most of the time when we do. The injuries in junk time hurt more than the loss. Not a bad call. I think that probably makes sense. And what we had to endure. Brendan on Twitter, we are not as good as many in the media have been saying. Why else are we nearly always behind at 3/4 time? Top sides don't get themselves into that position. Yes, we are really exciting when we click, but do we really expect to have to always stage a miraculous fight back to win a game? And you know what? It's starting to get a little tiring, the narrative of if we are down at 3/4 time. And it's sort of been portrayed by the club a little bit where it's like, oh, we'll come back, we'll play the minutes. But with the performances of the last 2 weeks, it never felt likely that we were even in a position to come back. So that narrative's starting to wear off a bit.
Yeah, and I think when we have looked bouncy and energetic, despite being down, there's been some belief from the fans that we're going to get it done. But I think you used the term "a bridge too far" last week, Jacko, in our WhatsApp chat, and it felt that way halfway through the third term. It was just like, we are gassed, so that can't continue.
Yeah, you can't rely on that every week, can you, Nico? And this is sort of what I'm alluding to a little bit about trends. They either go one way or the other, and I'm really hoping that in the next 3 weeks we can sort of just buck that trend. And you don't. I say that, but you don't find yourself 2 games on clear out on top with 3 rounds to go without playing some elite footy.
Of course.
We are this good, and we have seen examples of it. We just need to see examples of it over 4 quarters more consistently.
Peter on Twitter, the constant talk of not knowing our best side is coming back to haunt us now. No rhythm of play. We need structure to set our best 22 and just let the boys get back to what they do. Top of the ladder, and we keep dropping blokes and moving the pieces around. Interesting call there from Peter.
We're forced to drop blokes this week, which is
Well,
the
yes.
unfortunate
But do you
part of
think
it.
over the last few weeks it's been warranted to change the side? I still think the changes that were made were the correct ones 95% of the time.
Yeah, I think absolutely. I think now is the forward line one's the fascinating for me. We spoke about it all year about Mason Cox, Ash Johnson, Billy Frampton, how their spot looks in the side, and I think Ash had a bad game on the weekend. I think we're getting to the point in the year where you need to be ferocious at selection table. So I would be giving him another chance this week against the Cats. I'm not quite sure how Mason went on the weekend in the VFL, but I'd be giving Ash one more go. And then if we're not getting the results that we need to, Mason just has to come back in.
Richard on Twitter, they look legless to me. Every week in the last month, the effort level was getting worse. Coming into finals, you want to be getting stronger, yet we're on the slide. Did we peak too early? Next couple of weeks will be interesting.
Yeah, I don't think we've peaked too early. I think we've just hit a lull in the season, and that what we're seeing right now is like us stuck in second gear when we are used to operating in 5th or 6th. But I do believe we will bounce back.
Want to get your thoughts on this one from Damien. I said last week that the Port Adelaide win had a detrimental effect upon the psychology of the team. Call it arrogance, but the players thought that game guaranteed the flag. Now they've received the biggest slap ever. Dig deep, boys.
Wow, whack. Yeah, I think there's knee-jerk reactions, a lot of these comments, to be perfectly honest with you. It's very easy to go, oh, look how many signals there were in the wins that we had, but I think that to go ahead and suggest that the rest of our season is going to sort of fizzle out is just a little bit early for that sort of commentary. And come on, we want to win the flag, not put ourselves down.
ZVC Green on Instagram. Buck's words seem to ring loud for me this morning. It's never as good as it seems, and it's never as bad as it seems. Hopefully we can get back on track soon.
Bang on.
Always a great quote there from Bucks. We've got Charlie Spratt on Instagram. Don't know whether the boys are cooked or taking a backward step before finals. This effort we have displayed is concerning, but it's a testament to the opposition having figured out our game plan too. Too easy to beat now. Needs some serious adjustments. Is it that the opposition have worked out the way we play? One thing I did note from Saturday was our lack of use of the corridor. We did not want to go through the middle of the ground at all, and whether that was because Hawthorn were structured really well defensively or because we didn't have the confidence or the energy to do so, that was probably one I did find a little bit concerning, but I don't know if teams have really figured us out yet.
Have heard Fly say in a number of presses in the recent weeks that teams will take things away from you very quickly in this competition, and I would agree with that, particularly when you're the benchmark. The coaches of the opposition will study you to the nth degree, even if they're not playing you, so they can start to emulate your game style. But ultimately, I don't know if we're there yet, Nick, but I think that the lack of use of the corridor is a worry because we're playing our best footy when we go through there. So once again, I just think we are flat.
What do you think?
I think it speaks to just the downness of energy that we've had. I mean, not many sides are going to have the confidence to go through the corridor if you're just overall flat on the day.
Cal Green on Instagram. Relentless pressure seems to have waned in the last few weeks. When the opposition has possession, we were hunting them like hungry animals earlier. Now, not so much. Second effort's off the table with most as well. Watched Bo, Q and Noble miss first contest and go hard at the next each time and showed that hunger. Saw Jordan De Goey 3 times miss contests and stay sitting on the ground watching the play disappear, which was disappointing. Believe in the boys, but some look very complacent.
Yeah, I think that's really fair comment there.
Yeah, that's a good call, I think. Con on Facebook got smashed all over the ground and it starts at the centre bounces. If you can't win the contest, you will always be playing catch up. I think the experiment of going into games without a true ruckman should be over. Win the centre bounces and get first use of the ball. We have a lot of quality mids that didn't get the ball often enough. Not sure what he means about
Is-
the ruck call
Is
there.
Con referring to not having a legitimate second ruckman?
Potentially,
There,
that
Nico.
could be what he means a little bit more. Do you think that's the case? Do you think having Cox out of that side hurt us in that sense? I don't think it made a difference
I
personally.
think we've won heaps of games without a legitimate ruckman this year, Nico, so knee-jerk for me.
David, start tackling again. Start winning the contested ball. Take the game on. So many times we went slow and down the line. Hardly went through to guts at all, and there was no gut running yesterday. Or Saturday. No breaking the lines. It's like we're complacent with the minor premiership. Can't do that in September. It will be another season of tease and a waste of time and effort. So, yeah, and this is what some of these comments of late, and look, understanding you can be frustrated with a loss, that's for sure, but I think the emotion of it has gotten to people a little bit and it's taken way out of proportion. That's why I don't really like to comment about losses like this till the day after, because you have a little bit more perspective on things. Some of the sensationalism that I've seen over the last 48 hours has been ridiculous. And I'm not saying these fans are, but I think we need to take a backward step a little bit and just realise that it's a game that just wasn't Collingwood-like, to be honest. That's all I can put it to.
We've had a bad day, Nico, and we've ended up in the exact same position as what we were before the round started, and we've got an opportunity against Geelong to, keep pushing on. So, all about perspective, and hopefully we can bounce back.
I'll finish with Carnival King on Instagram. Perspective is a great thing. We're still 2 games clear on top with a very high chance of finishing on top of the ladder and an incredible coaching staff. Having said that, the obvious issue we need to address is getting an absolute flogging at centre clearances. I loved seeing Bo in there and a bit of youth and would take Carmichael over Adams any day of the week.
Yeah, once again, I think that comment, if we win, doesn't exist, to be honest.
Yeah.
I think we've all absolutely loved Tay over the last month. He's brought plenty of grunt, particularly in that Port Adelaide game, which is as recently as 3 weeks ago.
Yeah.
So, bit of perspective.
And I think he will have more of an opportunity to do that with Dacos out of the team. He can play that role a little bit more and not necessarily swap with Mitchell as often.
And just quickly as well, just zooming out, all of these players will be filthy that they've let this happen in the last 2 weeks. I just think it's so difficult to maintain the psychology of winning week in, week out, week in, week out. I still don't think it's out of the question that we get to the end of the season only having lost maybe 4 or 5 games, and that's an outstanding season no matter how you look at it. The real challenge here now is to make sure that we are peaking and playing the type of footy we know that stacks up come finals time, and there's absolutely some work to do in the midfield and in the forward line as well, getting that connect between Myercheck and McStay in particular, but very, very early to be going big on some of these calls, I reckon.
Yeah, no, there's some big calls, but that's what we like from the fans. They always give us those perspectives, and that's why we enjoy AskPiesNation as we did this week. So Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, TikTok, whatever is your best service to follow Pies Nation, we'll always be there. So another great Ask Pies Nation. Let's get straight to our Guess the Crowd competition winner. No margin shout-outs because we lost. We don't like doing that. But the crowd ended up being, 62,134 in the end. So it was a ticketed game leading into the week, which I think was a bit of a surprise definitely for me it was. I didn't expect it to be a point where it had to be an upgrade from your general admission. But did the crowd feel like it was 62,000, Jack?
Yeah, it felt big, and it was a bit of a shame because it was a Hawthorn home game, Nico. And to be fair, a fair few Hawk supporters did show up. It's generally against a side that's not going so well. You can see the outer Marcus looked a little bit empty sometimes, but no, they showed up, the Hawks fan. There was a lot of Collingwood fans there as well, but just disappointing they didn't get the chance to roar.
No.
And Jacko, what did you think of that pre-match entertainment? Did that satisfy you?
What was the pre-match entertainment? I must have missed
they
this.
had some music going, Nico, but it was ordinary.
Yeah, I didn't think much of it, Nico. That's where I stand on that.
All right, I won't ask any more questions. Our Guess the Crowd winner this week is Dean. and incredibly, he was 3 people off the correct crowd. So we're getting to the point, boys, where we're going to have someone here that gets it spot on. I just know it's going to happen soon. But Dean was pretty close with 3, so let's give him a call and have a quick chat.
Hello, Dean speaking.
G'day, Dean. It's Nicholas here from the Pies Nation podcast, mate. How are things?
Hey, good. Thanks, Nicholas. How are you?
Yeah, not too bad. Not too bad. I mean, obviously could be better with what transpired on Saturday, but congratulations on being our Guess the Crowd winner for this week. Were you one of the 62,000 to make your way to the G on Saturday?
Indeed, I sat there through the whole thing.
And how did you find the performance? We've had a little bit of an event here on this episode, but keen to get your opinion on what took place and I guess where the future holds for the rest of the season following it.
Well, pretty much all I was thinking about before the game is don't let Sicily do what he wants. And that's exactly what happened. And me and my friend I go to every week. We both watched it, and he's just on his own, just doing whatever he wanted. I think he had 14 touches and kicked a goal in the first quarter, and no one went near him. It's just, I would just be amused with it.
Incredibly frustrating indeed, Dean. Thanks so much for coming on, mate. Where do you stand now on the last 3 games of the year? I mean, there's been a lot of, we've spoken about knee-jerk reactions on this episode of the pod on what the rest of our season may look like. How are your feelings for that?
I think we've actually been just declining slowly for about 6 weeks, to be fair. I just think we're just slowly just drifting away from what we were very good at. And we saw, well, we got smacked by Carlton 2 weeks ago around the ball, and we had zero intensity against Hawthorn. It was just really strange. And obviously we've lost Nick Dacos now, but then again, you can't pin your whole hopes on one player, but although he's been good for us. But I think my personal view is I think we need Frampton in the side because he plays back, he can play a ruck, and he can play forward, and he can also pinch hit the ruck when he's in those positions as well. Also, I want Frampton to play so that Darcy Moore's freed up from having to go one-on-one against the big guys down the back because we miss his run, I think, when he's locked down on one big back like he was against Curnow. And again, we play on a Charlie, what's his name, from Port. He just gets stuck one-on-one, and we miss his run. So that's my view, but I don't know what we're going to do about it. I think that surely is it time to give Finn McRae a go? He's been belting the door down the VFL. Why don't we just give him a game? I think we're going to lose him for nothing unless we give him a sniff.
Oh, I think he's injured at the moment with his thumb. He hasn't played VFL over the last couple of weeks, so the timing's been a little bit unfortunate. But I get your thoughts with Frampton. I think that's a great call, and obviously with Murph's injury, he's going to be forced to come back in anyway, but it's going to present a great opportunity.
Yeah, that's right. So it's going to be interesting. I just don't know why we've sort of drifted off. I don't know, but you hear the people talking about they go to heavy training blocks and whatever, but I don't know. Have you heard anything about that or not?
No, not that I'm aware of. I know Fly would probably be pretty intense at training, but not sure, Marcus.
Dean, Marcus here. Thank you for joining us.
No worries.
Loving your commentary so far. We might have to have you on the podcast sometime, straight to the point, which we love. But look, with Nick Dacos going out of the side, obviously it is a huge spanner in the works this time of year. Just keen to hear your thoughts on what sort of midfield rotations that might enforce now.
Well, I don't know. Maybe we've got to. I think, although disappointing too. I think Mitchell's out for a bit now too. Is he or not? I saw this great big lump thing he had in his thigh, whatever. After
I haven't heard any injury report just yet from Mitchell.
Either, but maybe we've got to. Well, to go is key. We know when he plays well, we would go well. He's been a bit out of sorts too. Like, remember last year in the finals, he's getting his 25, 20, 30 touches and kicking a goal or two and being involved in those chains. He just hasn't really. He's drifted out of that. Sort of imposing himself in the games a bit too, but maybe I don't know. Do we got to roll the dice and throw a bloody mate out in the guts as well, or something, just to give a go, just to beef it up a bit? Because the other thing I was a bit disappointed about when Nick got absolutely smashed by those Hawthorn blokes on the weekend against Hawthorn, and I didn't think many went in and helped him, to be honest. I think Pendles might have gone in once or twice, but I think he just got a bit bashed up too by those guys. So they're not particularly imposing types either, but they were just into him all day. He hardly touched it after a while.
Yeah, Finn McGuinness was pretty much on him for the whole time, wasn't he? He was all over him. But yeah, hopefully Dakes can come back stronger from that injury. Let's get a little bit more positive, Dean. Obviously, it hasn't been a great couple of weeks for us, but we always like to get the journeys of the Pies supporters we have as part of Guess
Yeah.
the Crowd, and keen to hear how you started following Collingwood and your memories along the way.
So I was born and bred in Geelong.
Oh, okay.
Went
Timely.
to family all Geelong, and everyone at school Geelong. And there was 3 or 4 Collingwood supporters at school, and we stuck together. And I think it was 1985 we actually beat Geelong down at Kennedy Park in the old ground before they built 20 new stadiums on it. And we were proud next Monday walking around school, being 3 or 4 Pies supporters. We went down and watched it too. They weren't happy with the Cat supporters, I can tell you. So anyway, it was it inured me against. I just copped that much crap for so long, but what they didn't realise was just making me stronger.
Absolutely.
That's lovely, Jack.
You've just
Anyway,
touched.
I've had a bit of fun with that over the years, but this last couple of years has been fun, and just been good to go and watch some good style of footy as well. After the horrible Buckley years, where we ended up basically he had it for a decade, and we ended up kicking about 4 goals a game or something. It's horrendous.
It was terrible.
You just touched on it there, Dean, about how far back your Collingwood journey goes. Is there
Yeah.
a standout game for you amongst all that perhaps, might go over the standard Collingwood supporter's head?
Yeah, the one that I do remember well, I can't remember whether it was 2003 or 2002. We went over, we beat Port Adelaide on their own ground, and Ben Johnson tackled, what's his name?
Mm.
Yeah.
In the score. We saved the goal and we went up the other end. I think Taz might have kicked the winner, or Leon or someone. But I remember watching that. I was living in Richmond at the time, watching that, and I recorded it in VHS and watched it about 10 times. That was the one. And Lacuria ran Josh Franco, just ran him up and down the ground, just destroyed. And they had a shot at the end, and Josh Franco was just on the bench, just heaving, exhausted.
I reckon 2002 qualifying final. I reckon that's what you're talking about.
Those years, yeah.
Yeah, perfect. No, Dean, it's been awesome to have you as part of the podcast today, mate, and appreciate you going through your comments for us, and hopefully we're celebrating some wins again soon.
Yeah, hopefully. All right. Thanks again, guys. Have a good one.
Thanks, Dean.
There we go. That was Dean joining us as part of the Guess the Crowd competition. That could be you if you guess closest to the crowd. So be sure to get involved with Lukey's game day posts each week. Give your best guess for the crowd. And if you are closest, that'll be you joining us as part of the Pies Nation podcast. That's some great comments there, Dean.
Absolutely, it was, Nico. I mean, we talk about Dean being the closest by 3, I think, on the crowd. I don't know if we've had many closer than that. And I certainly can't remember a chat as good as that either. So that was fantastic by Dean. And yeah, setting the standard or setting the bar high for guests to come, Marcus.
Straight down the line and recording with the VHS, Jacko. Who would have thought?
He was loving it, that's for
Long time
sure.
ago.
A Geelong Pies fan. You don't see too many of those, that's for sure.
I know, we should got a bit more out of him about the hubbub brewing in Geelong this weekend, Nico.
Well, if we get up, we might have to give him another call, see how
right.
he's going. Let's get to our VFL wrap from the week, and unfortunately, the losses continued on Sunday, and we weren't able to get up over who is now top of the table, Werribee.
Yeah, Nico, it was unfortunate. It was a similar type of game, I reckon, with the lack of energy. Our leading possession getter, Lockie Tardrew, Jacko, 21 touches from your leading
Not
possession
much.
getter on the ground. And, I mean, you've got the likes of Trey Rusco, Trent Bianco, Mason Cox, Reece McInnes, Harvey Harrison. I could go on, Will Hoskin-Elliott, who have playing AFL. So I'm not sure what's going on at the Pies right now, but there might be a lack of energy that's proliferating through to the Scooby-Doos as well. Who knows? Any case, we'll get the full breakdown from the surgeon. Return to me for the ladder.
Well, Serge said we had 16 AFL listed players in the VFL on the weekend. 16. That's
16.
almost a starting 18. It's incredible. Disappointing performance, outplayed. Work rate was down, particularly in the forward half, beaten in the stoppages. Poor skill errors around the ground, creating turnovers and leading to opposition goals. Allowed Werribee too much space for most of the game. The footy smarts were questionable under pressure. This sounds like the AFL review, pretty much. Unable to take advantage of our hitouts. Cox was our best. He had 46 hitouts, and we won the hitout 63-21. But I think we lost at clearances. So there you go. That says what you need to know. He had 15 touches and also a goal, did Cox. Merley, Rusco, Harrison, Tards, Huswaite, all very serviceable. Arlo Draper, okay. Pies had 16 more tackles, but very ineffective. Kruger, a better second half player. Ginnivan was the only player with any forward craft, but was mostly beaten. Not many put their hands up today for AFL spots. Bianco, Reef, Begg, Edwards, Ryan, all down. Just hanging in there. Cats next week.
So are we in a bit of a funk here across
Yeah,
the
something's
entire
going on.
squad?
There's some. We must have been cursed or something. I don't know what's going on, but it's happening AFL and VFL level clearly.
Strange times. Anyway, let's hope it doesn't last too much longer. We are still inside the top 10. We are 10th. We are 10th exactly, Nico, and we do play the Cats this weekend, 11:35 at Vic Park. Might get on down for that one for some local Saturday footy. But yes, look, both teams should make the 8 with that many. In terms of the 1s and 2s, with the VFL side having that much talent on the park, but very interesting that we have had some similar observations.
Yes, it was incredibly similar reading that to what took place from the boys on Saturday. I think we were scoreless or potentially goalless in the first quarter, and Werribee
Correct.
were way too strong, and that was it. Couldn't really respond after that. So hopefully we can bounce back in the VFL too. Before we wrap up, let's chat a little bit of the Cats and what we can expect on Friday night, because they've been in some great form of late. They're outside the top 8 for now, but not by much. They had a big win over Port Adelaide at GMHBA Stadium on Saturday night. They've got a couple of players out of the team at the moment, but other than that, they are almost looking to a point where we saw them last year at the back end, and they went on to win the flag, of course. But what is it? What is it that we need to change? I mean, we spoke about a lot of the things that went wrong in the Hawthorn game earlier, winning the ball in the coalface and going through the corridor, trying to work out this forward line structure. Is it just getting back to having that belief again? Because for me, that's all it really is.
I think so, and obviously with Murph, prior to the match that just went, we were a pretty fit-looking team with not many injuries on the list. So the idea that guys are having to work overtime or beyond their normal capacities that thesis doesn't really check out. So I think it is just back to that belief factor, Nico, and I hope that Friday night footy under the MCG lights. We also go into this game, I believe, with the same amount of rest as Geelong as well, so there's no apparent advantage there, as well as we maybe thought against the Carlton game. So, look, I can't put my finger on it at the moment, as you can tell, but it just feels like a blip on the radar rather than something that other fans might think is a part of a longer term trend.
Yeah, great opportunity on Friday night, Nico, against a good side that'll test us. I know Geelong are sort of sitting in that sort of bottom 4 of the 8 at the moment, and they're a strange old side. They lost to Freo down at Cardinia Park last week, and then have a reasonable game against probably what would most say an undermanned Port on Saturday night, but they are reasonably fit and coming to the point end of the year, they're playing the right type of footy. So it's a great game for us to get back to the winning ways that we know. So yeah, very, very interested. Just hope we can keep that man Jeremy Cameron just a little bit on our heel.
Yeah, well, Frampton coming in might be a good time because we didn't have him. He didn't play round 1, if you remember. And so, of course, Cameron towed us up. And fortunately, we were still able to get the win. But this time around with Billy there, it might open up a little bit more of a challenge for Jezza. So we'll see how that goes. We won't spend too much time on selection because we could talk about it for about 50 minutes, I reckon. But one person I want to bring up is Jack Ginnivan. He's been a name that started to filter through from fans over the last fortnight, particularly with the frustrations that have come around from the forward line. There's been so much inconsistency, probably apart from Jamie Elliott. There hasn't been anyone else in that team that's been able to provide a bit of a spark. Bobby Hill's been incredibly down on form. Mycheck's had a rough couple of weeks. McStay's been okay, but obviously we still want to expect a lot more from him. Is it time to give Jack one more chance in the senior team, or has he run his race too late?
I don't know if Bobby Hill, despite being quiet over the last 4 to 6 weeks, has done enough to get dropped. It's a funny one. I know Fly is big on giving players opportunity if they're playing their role, and that doesn't always show up as high possessions or what have you. It's just about playing your role. But in any case, I think Ginnivan is the type of player who will bring spice to our mix, but whether he does enough to impact the match week to week, the way that Bobby Hill probably hasn't been, but has still been, again, fitting in well enough to be part of a lot of wins and tend not to get dropped when that's happening. So I can appreciate the need for change at the moment and that sentiment. He's a fan favourite as well, I think, with his blonde hair and the high tackles. Everyone loves Jack, but I can't see him coming back to this team.
Yeah, I completely agree, Nico. And Bobby Hill's the only one that I would be taking him out for, if at all. But I'm not taking him out at the moment. I think Bobby Hill deserves another shot in this side. He's been down, but there's certainly been players worse off on form recently than him. And I think Bobby Hill, you have to take him out for Gideon. If you're taking anyone else apart from Bobby Hill, you're making too many structural changes with, that means that Jamie Elliott or Brodie Myercheck has to play longer up the ground. So for now, no. But this time a week is a long time in footy, as they say, Nico. So this time next week it could be a different tune, but we'll see how we go.
Sub
This week,
could he?
oh,
Who comes out though?
Well, you've got you put Markov back into the team. You've got Frampton coming in for Murph. Does that sort of become the only two changes you need? And then you put.
So you're saying Markov comes on as the starter?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
So you take
that right?
Dacos out, you take Murph out, you put Frampton in for Murph, you put Markov in for Dakes.
So we still need to drop someone for a sub though.
No, so Markov comes in.
Someone in for a sub. Is that what you're
Someone
saying?
in for a sub.
Yeah.
Was that where Jack comes in potentially? I don't know. Hoskinelli got pulled out halfway through the reserves game. I should have added.
That's right.
So he's someone that Fly may be potentially looking at bringing back into this team as well. So who knows? We'll only find out on Thursday night when he makes his selection. Let's get to a Monday headline before we wrap up this week's
sure.
episode.
Nico, Monday headline: Darcy Moore, best on ground, bounces back and give me more. And doesn't. He's just done this strange thing where he's tried to fake the handball in the last couple of weeks. So he has a game void of that.
That's a nice one. Yep.
My weekend headline this week, Nico, is they do it again. I've got this weird feeling it's gonna go down to the wire and we're gonna get over the line. And I've got a feeling it might be Ash Johnson who is the match winner for us.
Okay.
Late in the game,
Late game.
potentially after the siren type areas. I'm clutching at straws here, I know, but yeah, that's my weekend headline.
Monday headline: De Goey takes the mantle. He is going to explode in that midfield, and he is going to take charge and win us the game off his own boot, I reckon.
He's got a great record against the Cats.
Whether that's in the forward line or in the midfield, he is the man that needs to stand up now, and I'm hoping that he'll do so, and it gets us a win.
Now's the time.
It's again on Friday night. That will do for this week's episode. Marcus and Jack, thanks for coming on and reliving all the pain from Saturday.
Yeah, put that one to bed, I reckon.
Absolutely.
Thanks, Nico. Weekly
Archive
therapy.
this episode.
So hopefully there's a lot more smiles next week. But until next week, I've been your host, Nicholas Sacco. You've been listening or watching to the Pies Nation podcast, where the pies are hot and the drinks are cold.